World food prices. Something a lot of people haven't been noticing is how things kind of, that were considered third world problems are now starting to become, second and first world problems. And what I consider a third world is basically a country where people travel around by either foot, oxen, or cart with an oxen, or whatever. Second world is okay. There's vehicles available. There's hydro. There's light infrastructure. There's some manufacturing. People go to kind of like market jobs and stuff like that. Stores and what have you. And then first world is basically you got planes, automobiles, ships, all kinds of stuff, trains, all that stuff, and all that kind of transportation. You've got manufacturing. You've got entertainment. You got everything. Okay. So, with that said, food prices. Okay, a lot of people haven't picked up on the bread lines around the world. Some of the bread lines, for example, Greece, Spain, and Italy. The bread lines in Italy are the worst they've been since the end of World War II. So, they're having a hardship. And Italy's a first world country. So is Spain. They have bullet trains and all that type of stuff. But obviously they have it. A lot of problems. Same with Ireland, same with France, and stuff like that. So a lot of people are unemployed. In the EU area, all the EU, I think it's something like 50% of all the youth is pretty much, or 25% of all the youth is out of work. That's a recipe for disaster. Idle hands, the same. It makes for disaster. Now, where people haven't really caught on that there's a huge bread line, because you don't see it as a bread line, is the United States. The United States, has massive unemployment. They're having a retail apocalypse going on right now, which is not being reported. Tons of box stores laying off tens of thousands of people, closing hundreds of stores. It's just a nightmare there. Now up here in Canada, well, it's a little different. We're love the government, hate the government, so to speak. The conservative government, we've had steady job growth pretty much from day one of this government. Okay, and it's minute, it's small job growth. Okay, but it's job growth nonetheless, right? And they're even talking about opening up another 800 Tim Hortons here. We pretty much survive on that stuff up here, I guess. So we got job growth. It's not lightning job growth. It's not like India or China type of job growth, but it's job growth. And 85% of it is in the private sector. That's a good thing. Now, there's a lot of other things that I disagree with, but when you look at, is it a positive or a negative? Well, you're better to have positive job growth than negative job growth, right? So, and of course, we are also $3 billion away from a balanced budget. For all intents and purposes, you could say we have a balanced budget, meaning we could pay for the stuff that we have. Okay, we're taking in enough taxes to, basically pay for stuff. Now, once we get to $3 billion leveled, well, right at that point, it's like, okay, well, we're not growing, our economy's our GDP is not going to grow, but it's not going to shrink, right? So at that point, what we need is, we need to start shrinking the government. Now, one thing about our government is actually it's bigger, considering you have to understand, our conservative government is socialist fascist. They are not actually conservative. None of the political parties in Canada or anywhere in the world are actually what they say they are. Okay, in the States, Obama is socialist communist, which would coincide, for example, the NDP party here is socialist communist. They won't tell you that, because people would never vote for them if they did. But when you look at what their policies are and what they want to do, they're socialist communists, right? So more socialist than communist, but socialist communist nonetheless. So with that said, up here in Canada, we didn't hit the 2008 speed bump that everybody else hit. Our banking is stricter than anybody else's banking. We have room to drop our interest rates if we need to, and stuff like that. Now, however, we're still doing what everybody else is doing. And yes, we have a bail-in program like every other country. The States has the bail-in program just like Cyprus. Okay, and we still basically have the same banking problem that banks can print money out of thin air, right? So, we're still doing. We just haven't caught up to the 2008 speed bump yet. But when the rest of the world goes into another like super depression, which will kill off a lot of people, then Canada will probably take a major hit. But we're in a better position than any other country due to the fact that, again, our debt is almost balanced. We're not that far off, and where our biggest hit will be from outside the country. This is why I'm more of a nationalist in the sense that you need to protect your country. Um, First, because we do 80% trade with the United States, so that 80% would make a huge. It'd be an automatic depression overnight, but we're still in a better position than anybody else in the world. Going down to the states again, the bread lines down there. Well, what are the bread lines down there? Well, it's the EBT cards. That's what the bread lines are. Okay, it's the basically the welfare. Now in the states, they're saying, oh, we've got like 6.3% unemployment or stuff like that, but they keep revising the numbers, saying, oh yeah, no, the economy grew by about almost 200,000 jobs in the last quarter. Okay, yeah, but something like 800,000 people have lost their jobs since then too, and they don't factor that in. And the other thing too is what they cheat on is that they always revise the numbers a second time, but when they bring, oh no, we actually our economy didn't grow, and it's like they also don't add in the people that are no longer looking for work or the people that are no longer eligible for unemployment benefits. They don't add that in as so every time those people lose their benefits, okay, it looks like your job your unemployment rate is falling because, oh well, if they're not on unemployment, then they must have a job, right? Well, it unfortunately doesn't work like that. About 1 in 4 Americans is out of a job right now, is not working. Okay, eligible people are not working, so that's huge. That is huge. And about 50 some odd percent, I can't remember if it's 51 or 54% of people are on some sort of government assistance in the states. So that's a lot of welfare. And then of course factor in the military-industrial complex, 700 bases around the world, and about 100, literally 100 wars going on at this time. It's a recipe for disaster. Okay, so yes, bail-in projects, banks will be stealing money out of people's accounts. Some people think as early as 2 weeks from the making of this video. I don't know about that, but we'll see. Be prepared for anything is all I say. Now, with that said, in the States, you have no manufacturing. Okay, your infrastructure is completely decayed. For that type of stuff, they're giving basically land to China in payment for the debt, called Chinese Free Trade Zones, and there's about 270 of them to be built. Some are already built. The other thing is that this is the reason why the Obama administration is pushing so hard to get into a war, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in Syria. Now, today, I don't know, I didn't check to see if Assad won the election. I can imagine he probably did, which will make it harder for the Americans to get into a war there. And of course, they're trying to surround China and get into a war there because they have to get into war. Why? Because it's that or pay back their creditors. You have China and Russia dumping U.S. treasuries like crazy, and other people are starting to. 80 other nations are kind of doing that as well. Where they're just not holding as much or they're just not buying any. So with that, I mean, that's going to really hurt the American economy big time, right? Because it means they can't export the debt. And if they can't export the debt, they're going to get hyperinflation, right? So mind you, they're probably going to come up with some sort of new scam that'll, hide the bubble somewhere else. That's all they're doing is playing hide the bubble, right? So that said, prices of things are going to go up. Now, in the States, you have the drought in California, which is nothing new. I mean, they have a drought just about every year, right? So, just how bad is the drought? Well, this one seems to be pretty bad, too. And, of course, in South America, you get the odd crop failure down there. The biggest problem with the crops in the States is they're insured. That's the biggest problem. Meaning, okay, well, say 80% of your crop is good, okay? But you're going to take a loss if you don't have 90% of your crop. Well, you write off the crop, right? And then that crop never makes it to the market, right? So that means that's that much less food that's going to get there. Even if, say, 70% of your crop failed, well, 30% of your crop could still go to the market, right? But it doesn't. They write off the entire crop. That's a bad system. Why? Because you end up throwing out stuff that would otherwise be sellable. Then plus you had mass cattle die-offs. Here, there, and everywhere, either from heat, either from, like in February, there was a huge mass cattle die-off. Then, of course, even in South America, there was something like 60,000 cows just died the other day in Bolivia. So you're going to see food shortages kind of everywhere with the unexpected stuff like that. You're going to, or at least major price hikes, right? And the beef and the pork the prices are going up. Now, that said, people, every time prices go up, it doesn't matter if it goes up by much. It's that everything is incrementally going up and you have stagflation, or people their wages aren't going up, but the prices of everything is going up. So what that leads to is a major problem. And then of course Obama basically is proposing his carbon tax. I guess they're going to get tough on the environment, so that means they're going to be bringing out a carbon tax. So it's already expensive to live. Okay, now they're going to bring out a carbon tax. Now they wanted to bring out a carbon tax here in Canada. The Conservative government is saying no, that's going to kill jobs. It's going to basically make it really hard for people. Well, all they got to say is proof of that is Ontario. Okay, Ontario used to be a have province, and ever since the Liberals pretty much been running it for the past decade or so, it's just been a nightmare for people there. Everything is so overinflated. Why? Well, number one, you have a huge government, huge provincial government. They have just way too much. They have to start shrinking the government. But it's also because the cost of living in Canada is calculated on a government salary for most areas. Okay, not on the average person who makes half to a third less than the average government employee, right? So when you look at it like that, okay, that's going to make a huge difference in the cost of living for a lot of people, and also that makes a difference in the housing. It makes a difference. It overinflates things, right? So in the States, well, you're still going to see that kind of same problem where the cost of living is just so low. They don't have a tax base in most of their states that could sustain most of the stuff they do. So they have two options. They either go insolvent, okay, and say, hey, you know what, we're bankrupt, we're done. Sorry, bankers got to go to jail, and the corrupt politicians. But that's probably not going to happen. And the proof of that is very simple, is that okay, as the people start getting more antsy because they can't afford to live and they can't afford to buy food, they're going to start taking to the streets. Now, the American government has been preparing for that for a good while now, and basically it's planned out. They know what's coming. They know exactly how to deal with it, and it's Department of Homeland Security. Name everybody a terrorist. So when the riots take the street, oh well, these are anti-government terrorists. That's what's going to happen. Now, that's still going to have devastating effects, yes, because the food riots will be the most violent. Picture the Rodney King riots, which when I was in '92, I left like a day before the Rodney King riots, or the day of the Rodney King riots, I believe. I got home and basically turned on the TV, and places I was a couple hours earlier were basically burning on fire. And I was like, wow, hey, geez, that's crazy. So anyway, picture the Rodney King riots everywhere in the States. That's not what you're really going to have to worry about, because it's the martial law where, the crackdown, everybody's a terrorist. And you have to understand the people that they've got in the Department of Homeland Security, the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, most of those people, okay, will go along to get along. Why? Because the government told them, like, this is your job, this is what you do. And these people are going to be willing to open fire on the citizens. There's not a government in history that hasn't had participants. I mean, just look at what's going on right now in the Ukraine. You've got basically the Ukraine chopped up into itty bitty pieces right now, okay, and you basically have even if you were to look at it, whether they recognize the parts that's separated, like Crimea or whatever, you have to understand that even if they look at it that way, it doesn't matter. You have a government that is sending people out to go kill its citizens. Whether the citizens or if they do accept that Crimea is a different area, now a new country, well, the problem they have there, now they're attacking another country, right? But they haven't done that yet, but they've attacked all the outskirts, Donetsk and Lugansk and all that. So you have all these people, and still women and children are getting killed, by, helicopter gunships and stuff like that. And they're getting killed left, right, and center. Government point is government is willing to shoot on its own people if the higher up people tell them to do that, right? So that's where your that's where your real problem is going to start, because there are people out there, and there's way less of them, but these people typically have special skills, and these people typically have the ability to, they're ex-law enforcement, military. They know the system. They know who's doing what. They know who gives what orders. They know, who made what policy, that type of thing. And these people are going to get payback. You call them freedom fighters, call them terrorists, call them whatever, but they're going to come out of the woodwork. These are not the people that go out into the street and riot and protest. These are the people that, okay, when the SHTF happens, we're going to spring to action now. I'm not making any threats. I'm just saying this is what happens typically every time a country goes into upheaval. You have people that are going to go start knocking off politicians and bankers, and we're already seeing that. So it's just going to go on like hyper steroids, which that's why I say the people you really want to get through to, okay, is the law enforcement and military, because to avoid all this stuff. I mean, food riots are gonna happen no matter what, but just stay clear of them is the best thing you can do, because protesting is not going to, at that point, protesting is not going to do you any good. It's just going to get you shot or killed, or at least badly beaten. Like, because that's what's going on in all these other countries where people are rioting for food and stuff like that. They just get beat up, killed, or shot. You know what I mean? Or something. So anyway, what it needs to happen is basically people need to become accountable. You need to take logs of, okay, well, Sergeant such and such went and beat up such and such. Here's the date, the time. So when everything calms down and whatever, hopefully you can arrest people that were doing wrong, right? You need to be able to keep people accountable, but most importantly, you need to do the Iceland solution. Now, when the Iceland solution, if it should happen, basically throw your corrupt politicians and bankers in jail, you're still going to have to deal with the food riots. You know what I mean? You're still going to have to deal with that. So, like, there's the point is this is kind of what whether you crash into the left ditch or the right ditch, it doesn't really matter. You're going into the ditch. Okay, so that's what a lot of people don't see. They think, okay, well, we can avert that. At this point, I don't think we can. Because there's just too many bubbles to deal with, and basically anything that's propped up is a bubble, right? Government, jobs, or welfare. That includes law enforcement, military. Anything that needs tax dollars to survive is a bubble. Okay. Now the thing is when you have no income coming in to pay for this stuff, it's all going to be not furloughed away. It's going to be just drastic cuts. Okay, your union's promised you XYZ an hour, and you're a government employee, and you're going to get all this. Tomorrow, sorry, executive order, you're cut off. You're out of a job, no severance package for you. But my union said, and of course you're going to have all those riots, right? But it's all these unions and stuff like that are bubbles. They're unfunded liabilities, retirement packages. It's just not, it's not sustainable. So you're going to have so many riots and stuff like that. And the thing is eventually they're not going to be able to pay the military. They're not going to be able to pay the law enforcement guys, and those guys are going to go away too. Why? Because that's what happens in all the other countries. They, you don't pay them, they go away. They're only as loyal as their paycheck, and that's most people. And then you got, at that point, again, you want to have stuff put away so that you can, defend yourself and stuff like that, because it will become a bit of a Mad Max kind of scenario. But to me, the food riots, what makes them so dangerous is that how unpredictable people will be. They will just be burning down places because they're there. You know what I mean? Like they'll be beating people up because they're there. And even if there's martial law and stuff like that, it won't matter because there's just the masses are too big. Like there's not enough law enforcement, military to actually hold a city, in check. When the people decide to riot, it's either they shoot them or let them riot, right? You can't really stop them. They can only haul so many people away to the FEMA camps, but it won't really matter either because, again, FEMA camps can only hold so many. So, you see how governments get into this predicament of what are your options? Well, your options are we're running out of people. We have a food shortage. We've got them in captivity in a FEMA camp. We're out of food shortage. What are we going to do? What are you going to do? What do you think is going to happen to these people? This is why I say wherever the riots, I get it. You want to exercise your democratic right and stuff like that and vote and protest and all that. And I agree with that. But now is the time to do that stuff. Because once those riots start, avoid them like the plague because they are. If they, again, when there's a food shortage, okay, how are they going to feed the prisoners? You know what I mean? Like, how are they going to feed the prisoners? So what happens to prisoners they can't feed? They either A, starve to death. And we've seen so many concentration camps. I'm not even just talking about the Nazi, forget about the Nazi concentration camps. Just look at anywhere in the world there's been a Nazi, not a Nazi concentration camp, but just a concentration camp, or even not even a concentration camp. Just look at refugee camps. Syrian refugees right now, there's about 1 million of them that are starting to starve to death. Okay? You see what I mean? Like, that's why you want to avoid that stuff like the plague. That said, are the refugee camps safe? Well, not really. Not really. I mean, they're safer. I mean, there's not a major war going there. But when everybody runs out of food there, they riot there as well. And it's crackdown, 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 right? So you just really want to avoid that system altogether, because you're going to have to ride it out. Is more the thing, right? Now, as far as the law enforcement, military, again, these guys are going to be more than willing to shoot citizens. There was a lady on Greg Hunter the other day. I can't remember her name now. She's more of a leftist, but she does bring out some amazing points. And she goes, people are worried about what's going to happen. She goes, just look what's happening now. I mean, you have law enforcement, military, okay, law enforcement going out there shooting people that are unarmed. They're shooting people back of the head while they're in police cars and handcuffs. You've got homeless guys getting shot because, oh, it might threaten the dog. You know what I mean? You have flashbang grenades throwing into toddlers' cribs. I mean, these people are unaccountable, you know? And they're out there doing this. The only thing now is that it's getting caught on video. That's why, and if you're a police officer and you're saying, well, they shouldn't be allowed to video you, well, then you shouldn't have your job. I mean, that's not a job that if you're really in the public's, and I care. I also say, hey, you know what? If you're a police officer, you should have a camera too. I mean, you got the police cruiser cam. Now they have things that are on their suits that they can have cameras. I say, yeah, keep yourself honest, keep them honest, fine. So they have a camera that says, okay, look, see the footage. This is the cop doing police brutality. Say, here's my footage showing the guy trying to punch me, you know what I mean, or try to hit me with a stick or stab me or whatever. So yeah, two-way street. So that I'm all in favor for. But what I'm not in favor for is, like some of these incidents. For example, that lady that got shot in front of the White House. At first, they played it off as she was mentally disturbed and stuff like that. Apparently, she wasn't. She basically took a wrong turn. Okay, and seen all these guys coming at her with guns, screaming and yelling at her. So she panicked. She backed out, and they shot her. They pulled her out of the car and they shot her. A couple of blocks later. Meanwhile, there's a baby in the car, and these cops are just like opening fire, like just no sense of common sense whatsoever. Like, what was the threat to these police officers? The lady had a car. Okay, she went to the barrier. Fine. She backed out. Send the police cruiser after. Fine. Pull her over. Say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. We're going to throw the cuffs on you. Whatever. But no, they immediately go to kill it. They're in Fallujah mode, right? And this we're seeing more and more, where the warrior cop, military cop is out there. So what happens when food riots come along? Wow. Rubber bullets. I mean, like all the things that happen in the Ukraine, in the Maidan Square. Okay, picture that. Okay, picture that in the States. But the difference is that it's going to get even worse in the States because people are more heavily armed. That's why there's such a push for gun control, right? Now, the thing is the American people being armed a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing. It's going to be bloody no matter which way they go because, again, hungry people will do the most insane things, right? But the thing is that what you're probably really going to see, too, is that that's the counterbalance. Again, we've already seen what the resistance is going. We got a glimpse of it at the Clive Bunty Ranch. We know what it's going to look like. Now, those people, again, those aren't the people that are going to show up at the protests. They don't protest. You're going to have people that will show up at protests with guns, just like in the Ukraine, the Maidan Square. But the thing is will Obama be as accepting of his overthrow as Yanukovych was? I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, you have to understand the Berkut in the Ukraine were told to kind of stand down. That they were told to not kill the protesters. Now, they killed some. Yes, they had to because, they were armed and they were shooting. Okay. But you have to understand it was a counter coup, right? That was going on there. Here, it's just going to be an all-out riot. It's a food riot, and food riots are always bloody. They're always messy. There's always a couple of people get killed, minimum. Now, add into that when the people who know who did what to who, well, those people are the ones that are going to be the most dangerous because they're not going to be fighting the DHS. They're not going to be fighting the FBI and the CIA and the NSA. No, they're going to be hunting. They're going to be going after the corrupt politicians, all the bankers, all those things, because that's why you're seeing the bankers getting knocked off now. Now, sure, a lot of them I believe, were legit suicides. Okay, but like the saying goes, dead men tell no tales. But on the other hand, if you see the rise of the warrior cop, you almost guaranteed to see the rise of the vigilante, right? And I'm not making any threats. I'm just making observation here. To me, the counter to a police state is hunters. Basically they're going to hunt out the corrupt politicians. It's like, well, if we can't change policy, law again, and it's something I've always said, when people no longer believe in the law, bad things happen. Well, this is probably what most likely will happen, is that you will have people out there basically, again, the politicians will have to hide wherever they have to hide, because you already see this around the world. I mean, like, for example, Assad, whether he Bashar al-Assad won the election last night. I didn't see, but I can guarantee you that guy just can't walk through downtown Damascus for a stroll. You know what I'm saying? Like, bad things are going to happen to him. You know, whether you like him or not. You know what I mean? Like, bad things are going to happen to him. Most of these politicians, same like the Saudi royal family and stuff like that. These people don't walk out in public. You know what I mean? So to speak. They have tons of armed guard. They clear the area before they go into it. Why? Because people don't like them. Now, in most of these countries, people don't have the means of fighting back. In the States, they do. Hence why the gun control is such a big issue that they have to get, because they know that if the food riots which will lead to basically the collapse, or just look at it this way. I keep hearing people saying that, okay, well, I've been hearing about the collapse for XYZ since 2008 and it hasn't come yet. Where you been? The prices of everything is up. The prices of everything is up. People are not getting how. It's like I said, how we'd see it is probably more likely like a slow bleed out, and it is, because what you're seeing is people are just progressively getting more poor. They're being taxed off their land. They're being taxed out of, they're just basically taxed out of the cost. The cost of living is being taxed out of their reach. You know what I mean? And again, you got stagflation. Again, you got a retail apocalypse going on in the States. Thousands of stores closing. I'll see if I can make a video just on that. I'll have to do a little more research, but tens of thousands of people, which outweighs any sort of so-called government job growth. They don't include the people that have, not looking for work or have lost their benefits. They don't include those people. So it looks like your economy is doing better, but in fact, it's doing way, way worse. So again, it doesn't matter how much they lie. Eventually, the truth comes out, right? So I guess I'm going to leave it at that. So all I can say is really be prepared for it. Put food away. Have some cash on hand. Have a common sense plan, especially if you live in a big area, metropolitan area or a city or even if you more likely live in a more lower income area where you're most likely to see a riot. Most of the times the riots are in the downtown cores. You could look at when Argentina collapsed, Zimbabwe, all the riots are always downtown. You look at Greece, Spain, Bahrain, Italy, Ireland, Egypt, it's always the downtown cores. That's where the most, even in Ukraine, it's the downtown cores that you take the most of the hit, okay? Or the town hall squares, those types of places. So if you're not super close to that, that's fine, but have something, get yourself set up so that you can weather the storm for, however, so you don't have to travel about as much as possible, right? So anyway, I'll leave it at that. So rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. G'day, hi and welcome. Okay, world food prices. Something a lot of people haven't been noticing is how things kind of, that were considered third world problems are now starting to become, second and first world problems. And what I consider a third world is basically a country where people travel around by either foot, oxen, or cart with an oxen, or whatever. Second world is, okay, there's vehicles available, there's hydro, there's light infrastructure, there's some manufacturing. People go to kind of, like market jobs and stuff like that, stores and what have you. And then, first world is basically you got planes, automobiles, ships, all kinds of stuff, trains, all that stuff, and all that kind of transportation. You've got manufacturing, you've got entertainment, you got everything. Okay, so with that said, food prices. Okay, a lot of people haven't picked up on the bread lines around the world. Some of the bread lines, for example, Greece, Spain, and Italy. The bread lines in Italy are the worst they've been since the end of World War II. So, they're having a hardship. And Italy's a first world country. So is Spain. They have, bullet trains and all that type of stuff. But, obviously they have it. A lot of problems. Same with Ireland, same with France, and stuff like that. So a lot of people are unemployed in the EU area. All the EU, I think it's something like 50% of all the youth is pretty much, or 25% of all the youth is out of work. That's a recipe for disaster. Idle hands, the same. It makes for disaster. Now, where people haven't really caught on that there's a huge bread line, because you don't see it as a breadline, is the United States. The United States, okay, has massive, massive unemployment. They're having a retail apocalypse going on right now, which is not being reported. Tons of box stores laying off tens of thousands of people, closing hundreds of stores. It's just a nightmare there. Now, up here in Canada, well, it's a little different. We're love the government, hate the government, so to speak. The conservative government, we've been had steady job growth pretty much from day one of this government. Okay, and it's minute, it's small job growth. Okay, but it's job growth nonetheless, right? And they're even talking about opening up another 800 Tim Hortons here. We pretty much survive on that stuff up here, I guess. So we got job growth. It's not lightning job growth. It's not like India or China type of job growth, but it's job growth, and 85% of it is in the private sector. That's a good thing. Now, there's a lot of other things that I disagree with, but when you look at, is it a positive or a negative? Well, you're better to have positive job growth than negative job growth, right? So, and of course, we are also $3 billion away from a balanced budget. For all intents and purposes, you could say we have a balanced budget, meaning we could pay for the stuff that we have. Okay, we're taking in enough taxes to basically pay for stuff. Now, once we get to $3 billion leveled, well, right at that point, it's like, okay, well, we're not growing, our economy's not, our GDP is not going to grow, but it's not going to shrink, right? So at that point, what we need is, okay, we need to start shrinking the government. Now, one thing about our government is actually it's bigger, considering you have to understand, our conservative government is socialist fascist. They are not actually conservative. None of the political parties in Canada or anywhere in the world are actually what they say they are. Okay, in the States, Obama is socialist communist, which would coincide, for example, the NDP party here is socialist communist. They won't tell you that, because people would never vote for them if they did. But when you look at what their policies are and what they want to do, they're socialist communists, right? So more socialist than communist, but socialist communist nonetheless. So with that said, up here in Canada, we didn't hit the 2008